And we're back. This is Hook and Ladder. Ed Orgeron was the first casualty of the season, head coaching wise. He is going to play out the rest of the season, and there'll be a new guy in LSU starting next season. And it's 21 months since his national title
championship. I think he's canned.
Yep.
I feel for the dude. I like him. I think he's a really fun personality.
Mm-hmm.
Love some of the things that come out of his mouth, right or wrong. To me, they're funny.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have been putting things on Twitter today, kind of allegations of, girlfriends at practice, kids at practice, running through the drills with the team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I necessarily believe that or not. There was other allegations as his coaches no longer want to coach with him or for him. The players no longer want to play for him. I don't really believe that either.
Mm-hmm.
If that was the case, why they don't want to play for him and they don't want to coach with him. Why not just get rid of him now?
Right.
It's like, okay, we're going to fire this guy because you don't want to be around him. But let's finish out the season first. I think this has been in the works for a while, so they might have an idea of who they want to get. That's kind of why they're doing it this way. But I dig Coach O.
Yeah.
I think he's a fun dude.
He's going to end up somewhere and he's going to do really well.
Yeah, he'll be a coordinator or something like that. He's not a horrible football coach.
No.
I mean, he caught lightning in a bottle with Brady at OC and Joe Burrow at QB. Won a title.
Yeah.
What can you say?
Yeah. Well, best of luck to him.
Yeah.
Moving right along, Friday night, Oregon knocked off California 24-17. I didn't get to see this one.
I watched most of it. Oregon, man, I mean, they've got some injuries, some tough injuries to deal with on the offensive side of the football. Defense, I think, with their safeties out for the year. They're basically in the driver's seat for the Pac-12 North, playing the Pac-12 championship game. If they can not screw up like they did against Stanford and lose, they might be in a playoff position. They've already beat Ohio State, who's sitting right outside the top 4 or 5. These guys could be in a position. Utah is a pretty decent team that is right now in the driver's seat for the Pac-12 South. So there's some quality opponents still left on the schedule for Oregon to beat and kind of give them that strength of schedule boost and get them in. But right now, they're kind of on the outside looking in. But they're a pretty good football team.
Yeah, just keep winning. Friday night, San Diego State knocked off San Jose State 19-13. San Diego State's the 24th ranked team in the country. Maybe they might have improved or stayed the same
Good
here.
for them.
Yeah,
Way to go, San Diego State Aztecs.
Yes.
Didn't see this game.
Nope. But moving right along, number 1 Georgia defeated Kentucky. It was a 3:30 game. We were there. We were present in this game. Georgia took care of business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing.
Looked impressive. Defense looked impressive. Kentucky had a really lengthy drive. Drove almost the length of the field, like 15 plays or something, scored a touchdown. It was impressive because they scored a touchdown and drove that many yards on Georgia. Then take a little bit of a closer look. There was the benefit of a pass interference and a couple other calls against Georgia. There was also a strip sack fumble recovery by Georgia that they said no, it wasn't. His arm was going forward, so they got a little help. But Georgia, that defense is really good. Offense, to me, they kind of seemed like they were toying with them a little bit. They were moving the football. They were trying to do some things that were kind of cute, but they ended up winning 30-13. And it really wasn't as close as the score kind of dictates.
Yeah.
Kentucky got a garbage time touchdown. Stoops called a timeout with under 30 seconds left to go, trying to get him a touchdown on 4th and goal. But yeah, impressive showing by the Dogs. Kentucky's a good football team.
Took care of business. In the upset of the day, Iowa knocked off by Purdue and handily, 24-7. Iowa's number 2 ranked team in the country. I don't know if it's the last time they've been number 2. But Iowa hurt their chances, and Purdue knocked off an undefeated Iowa team.
Every few years, Purdue is good for a pretty big upset, and this was this one. Big Ten, we've said it a number of times in the show, a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. That's going to be a really fun conference. Looking down the road, the heavyweights in that conference pretty much are all going to kind of do like a round robin against each other. But Iowa was kind of sitting pretty in that other division. But they still might have a shot getting that Big Ten championship game. So the season's not over for them just because they lost a game.
Yeah, just
but definitely disappointing.
Definitely disappointing. It has to hurt their fan base being where they're ranked and where they're poised to do this season. Moving right along, Cincinnati knocked off UCF 56-21. Another impressive showing by Cincinnati. Didn't see this one. That was what going on during.
I watched a little bit of the highlights.
Okay.
Actually, all the highlights on this one this morning. I took UCF to cover the points. I thought UCF would maybe give them a game. Eventually, someone's got to give Cincinnati a game. They're a really good team, and they just beat the hell out of UCF. Doing what you need to do as a number 3 team in the country. In the position that Cincinnati's in, you've got to win big. You've got to have those style points because the next game we're going to talk about, Oklahoma, they're right there on their heels, as is Alabama, as is Ohio State. Any kind of slip up from
done.
Cincinnati, even if they win and it's a close game, they could get jumped. I think they're gonna. We talked about it a little bit last week. I'll probably talk about it more today. I think they're gonna end up getting jumped anyway, but they've got to win by these big margins. I like Cincinnati. They're fun to watch.
Oklahoma knocked off TCU 52-31. Oklahoma's playing well. They got a quarterback who's moving the ball, not making mistakes.
They still don't play any defense. They still can't tackle. But it doesn't really matter when you have Caleb Williams running around like he is and throwing for 4 bills like he was. Benching Spencer Rattler last week against Texas and putting in Caleb Williams and how he played saved their season. The College Football Playoff Committee, I think they're just going to start salivating over Caleb Williams and just how completely changed Oklahoma is with that kid under center. They were sitting outside the top 5 or 4. Now they're in it. I think they're number 2 in the coaches poll, number 3 in the AP poll. Completely different Oklahoma team. They're looking to go undefeated. They got a couple of good tests coming up, but it's the Big 12.
We'll
Not
see
that
what
big of a
happens.
deal.
Alabama takes care of business after their loss last week against Texas A&M. Mississippi State 49-9. Alabama did what we expected them to do.
Yeah, you never want to play Alabama the week after they lose a game because you know they're going to be pissed.
Yes.
And they were. They played well.
Michigan State, Flying Mel Tuckers.
Mel Tucker's
20-15.
name is being floated around a lot today for the LSU gig. But Michigan State's playing well.
Yeah.
Ranked number 10 in the country. They still got to play Michigan and Ohio State. So we'll see what happens there. But, maybe after this we'll talk a little bit about the Big Ten, kind of how it's going to shape up there. But it's cool seeing Michigan State play well.
Yes, absolutely. Oklahoma State knocked off Texas 32-24. It's another team that Oklahoma's going to end up having to play at the end of the season. Bedlam. So no telling what's going to happen there.
Oklahoma State's 12 in the country. They'll probably move up a spot or 2. Texas was ranked 25 in the country, so technically they did beat a top 25 team.
Right.
But Oklahoma State's one of those teams that you look at it, you're like, oh wow, they're undefeated still. Because they've always been a solid program under Gundy, but they're always famous for just losing 1 or 2 head scratchers a year. Yeah, why are you losing this game? And here they are. They were down in this game. Yeah. They were down pretty big and came back to take the lead and won, fairly convincingly. So good for them. Maybe they will give Oklahoma that test, so it won't be just a guarantee that Oklahoma's in the playoffs.
Right. And here's the game that was interesting last night: the Ole Miss Tennessee game. They were throwing bottles, golf balls at Lane Kiffin at the end of the 4th quarter. Mustard bottles.
Who brings mustard into the freaking game? Who brings a golf ball into the game? It was a shit show. I was watching this game, and the cheerleaders had to leave, the dance team had to leave, the band had to leave. There was the footage on ESPN of I think it was the dance team or something, and they had these cardboard cutouts, and they were holding them over their head, running away. Benches kind of had to come towards the middle of the field. It was a complete shit show. Ole Miss doesn't look as good as they have been, and maybe losing Alabama will do that to you. They're beat up on offense. Their tight ends out. They're Braylon Saunders, the star wide receiver, who's from right here in LaGrange, played at Callaway High School. He's out. Matt Corral ran for like 200 yards, something close to that. Tennessee looks good offensively. Kid Hooker looks good. He got beat up pretty good in this game. They brought in Milton. He didn't do a squat, but
they had to carry him off the field.
Yeah, he played. He was giving it his all. His pants were ripped in his butt. He'd been ripping his pants. Tennessee is playing good. We talked about this last week. They're way ahead of schedule, but I expected Ole Miss to be a little bit better. Maybe, like I said, that's just maybe losing to Alabama kind of put them down. They barely beat Arkansas last week. They don't play defense. But good for them. Survive in advance in a definitely a hostile environment.
5-1. Auburn knocked off Arkansas 38-23. I think you talk about Arkansas. They started out 4-0, went into Athens. Mm-hmm. I think you get into where Arkansas, they're showing you that they're just not as deep as a lot of these other SEC programs. They just don't get the recruits. Even Auburn gets a lot of good recruits, 4 or 5-star guys.
They don't develop them in Auburn, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia broke Arkansas. Mm-hmm. They lose, they get dominated at Georgia. There was all that hype. They were the feel-good story of the season up until that point. They get absolutely obliterated by Georgia. And then they just go and lose the next 2 games in a row. Mm-hmm. I still think they're a pretty good football team, but like you said, they lack depth. So they're prone to losing a couple of games like this. Mm-hmm. Where you don't think they're going to lose the game. They're not there yet. But I think Pittman's going to get them there. Yeah. They'll probably go 8-4, I would say, this season. Maybe 7-5. Mm-hmm. Go to a bowl game against some lower tier team and probably win that game. Take Pittman a few years. The kids in Arkansas want to play for him. Yeah. So they're not a bad team. I am surprised Auburn won that game, though. Mm-hmm. I picked Arkansas to win. Bo Nix played really, really well. Bo Nix is like that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde deal. He plays really great one game, plays like dog shit the other game, and comes back, plays really great the next game. You never know what you're going to get with Bo Nix, but he played very well yesterday.
Utah knocked off Arizona State 35-21. Utah's kind of established themselves in the Pac-12 South.
Yeah, they're in the driver's seat of the Pac-12 South. They're 4-2, so there's no real threat of them going to the playoff or even being ranked very high. They're an unranked team now. They'll probably be ranked after beating Arizona State. Mm-hmm. But they're 3-0 in the Pac-12 South. They were losing this game. I watched this game, this whole game last night. And I was very impressed with them. They were down pretty big.
That's like 21-7.
Yeah, they were down 21-7. They came back in the second half and took it to them.
That's right. Moving right along, BYU, I think there's 2 in a row for them.
Yeah, lost 2 games in a row.
38-24. Kind of had a little high on them when the season started.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
I still think they're a good football team.
Yeah.
Dave Arena's got Baylor playing really well. Look at Baylor, 6-1. Mm-hmm. They're 4-0 in the conference.
Yeah, I would expect them to
and they're unranked.
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember who they lose to. They lose to Oklahoma State. They lost to somebody, and I don't think it was Oklahoma State. I think it was like an unranked team, which caused them to be unranked. Mm-hmm. But Baylor's playing well. Another possible test for Oklahoma. A rematch of the Big 12 championship game from 2 years ago. Baylor and Oklahoma. I still think BYU's a good team. They played fairly well during this game. They just couldn't close the deal when they needed to. But good for Baylor, 6-1.
Yeah. Yesterday, LSU knocked off Florida. We talked about Ed being canned. I mean, they knew that Ed was going to be gone, and yet LSU ends up beating Florida. And that tells you just where the Florida program is right
Second year in a row, LSU beats Florida, and they have absolutely no business beating Florida. LSU looked like garbage this year, and they had a huge game against the Gators. I think their running back ran for like 260 or something like that, mm-hmm. 3 touchdowns. Florida couldn't stop them. Florida's, they scored 42 points. They scored 22 points in the third quarter alone, mm-hmm. and they still turned the ball over like 5 times. I want to say Emory had 3 picks, and the other kid had 2. It looks like they finally maybe have settled with Richardson mm-hmm. at quarterback maybe. That's what it looked like watching the game at the tailgate yesterday. They took Emory out after a couple of ugly picks, put in Richardson, and he didn't really do a whole lot better. How do you lose that game? If you're Florida, you need to just keep rolling to just stay in contention. And another one of those examples of, what are you doing losing this football mm-hmm. game? And Florida's now done that twice this season and 2 years in a row to LSU. So
can't do it. Can't have it.
You hate to see it, but you love to see it.
Yeah.
No Florida fans here.
Right. Texas A&M knocks off Missouri 35-14. You look at A&M and you're thinking, man, they're really starting to play some pretty good football.
Yeah, Calzada didn't even have that good of a game yesterday, but they do what they're supposed to do. They're kind of turning into the A&M that we all thought they would be this year, rolling along nicely. Not going to get a ton of style points for winning 35-14 at Missouri, but I mean, hey, it's a road game in the SEC. Just survive in advance. Just did what they had to do.
Yes, in the last game in the top 25, NC State knocked over Boston College 33-7. We definitely didn't see this one, but
No, but NC State's 22 in the country. They beat Clemson, which after watching Clemson on Friday, doesn't really seem all that impressive anymore.
Yeah.
But NC State is going to battle the coming weeks for a spot in the ACC championship game. I really honestly believe it's going to end up being Clemson and Pitt. I think Clemson's going to do enough to take that division, their side of the conference. And Pitt's playing real well.
Right.
Pitt's unranked.
Yeah.
And they're playing real well. So we'll see what happens to them.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about some next week's games. Coastal Carolina will be taking on Appalachian State Wednesday night at 7:30.
Wednesday?
Coastal Carolina is 14th in the country. Yeah, they're
What time is it? 7:30?
7:30.
Cool.
Wednesday night games, man.
I'll get to watch that game.
We're starting to do Wednesday night games again. Thursday, we got the SMU playing Tulane. That'll be 7:30. That's like the big game of the
SMU, number 21 in the country, undefeated. In a couple weeks, they got to go through a little gauntlet. SMU does, and Cincinnati really needs SMU to be undefeated when they meet. I want to say like in mid-November. That just helps Cincinnati's strength of schedule to help maybe solidify their spot in the playoffs. We'll see what happens. But SMU is undefeated, just like Oklahoma State. It's like, oh yeah, these guys are undefeated still.
Friday night, you got a Washington playing Arizona. That could be an interesting game. 10:30 for $9. We can catch a plane to Tucson and go.
Let's do it, man.
Let's go check it out.
I'll be watching that game because there'll be no games for us next Saturday.
Right. Cincinnati against Navy at noon. At number 2 ranked Cincinnati Bearcats. Hopefully that stays the same. Hopefully they can take care of business. I'd like to see another team like Cincinnati or Boise State or somebody like that kind of take a shot at it.
Yeah, I mean it's no secret that I want different teams in the playoffs, some new blood. It's nothing against programs like Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Alabama, and Clemson. They're excellent programs. I've got a lot of respect for them. I enjoy watching most of those teams.
Yeah.
But I think college football fans as a whole are kind of just tired of basically 3 of those 4 teams guaranteeing themselves a spot in the playoff after week 1 practically.
Right.
I mean, everyone was writing Oklahoma off, and look where they are now.
Yeah, sitting 3.
Number 3 in the AP, number 2 in the coaches poll. Would like to see Cincinnati get in. I think that they can easily finish the season undefeated and win that conference championship. The FPI for them going forward, their lowest percentage is like 86, something crazy like that. But I do see a scenario where Ohio State could beat 3 ranked teams. They've got to play number 7 Penn State soon. They got to play number 25 Purdue soon, and then they close the season with number 10 Michigan State and number 5 Michigan. They beat all those ranked teams, go to the conference championship and win that. That's going to be one hell of a strength of schedule, and it's going to probably jump them into the top 4. And if things stay the way they do now, and let's say Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, I still think Georgia and Alabama both in. Ohio State's easily jumping Cincinnati, in my opinion. So is Oklahoma. As long as those 2 teams don't lose, I think they're jumping them.
Yes, and there's both of those teams have some gauntlets. So they got to go through.
Yeah, and which basically will make it once again the usual suspects in the playoffs. It's kind of boring.
Right. Oklahoma plays at noon Saturday against Kansas. Michigan still undefeated, still hanging around. They're going to be playing Northwestern. Penn State we're taking on Illinois.
Wake Forest.
Okay.
Number 1 on that division right now with Clemson. Clemson only got 1 loss in the conference. I really see a scenario where Clemson ends up winning out and getting in. But Wake Forest, undefeated in the conference. I think they're undefeated all together.
Yeah.
16 in the country, good for them.
Yeah, big games.
Deacons.
The
I think Florida State might finally get a win. They're playing UMass.
Yeah, I think that's happening.
I think they've got one win the last 2 seasons.
And Purdue is now a ranked team. They got Wisconsin, and I feel like they're going to beat Wisconsin. The way Wisconsin's been playing.
That game right there, 3:30 on Fox. Number 8 Oklahoma State versus Iowa State. That'd be a good game to watch. Then also 3:30, number 10 Oregon versus UCLA. UCLA is not bad.
No.
In that southern, basically in second place in the Pac-12 South. This is a game Oregon has to win to stay alive.
They actually moved to number 10 in the country.
Yeah.
So they moved down. LSU, Ole Miss, 3:30 game on CBS.
Clemson, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is ranked number 23 in the country. That'll be a good game.
I think Clemson.
All these games are at 3:30. I'm going to miss all these games because it's going to be my kid's birthday.
Clemson's not ranked in AP, but they are ranked in the coaches poll. I think like 24, 25.
Yeah. That's good. That's going to be a huge game right there.
Yeah, they need to get it together. They need to get it together quick.
I'm calling right now. I'm going to say Pittsburgh wins that game. I think they're playing so good offensively. I think they win that game.
Okay. Moving right along. Tennessee's going to get smoked by Alabama, unfortunately.
Hopefully Tennessee doesn't get any of their players hurt.
Yeah.
That tends to happen when you play Alabama.
San Diego State will be taking on Air Force at 7.
Doesn't look like there's too many decent. There's still some more night games.
Oh, I've got Notre Dame USC.
Yeah, it's always a good rivalry. Probably a boring game because both those teams aren't very good, but it's a good rivalry. Ohio State taking on Indiana at Indiana.
7:30.
Indiana's not who we thought they were going to be.
Unfortunately.
But still should be a good game. 7:30. A rare night game for Ohio State. I know all their fans are pissed. They like those noon kickoffs for some freaking reason.
Texas A&M has South Carolina.
Easy win for the Aggies.
Miami against NC State at Miami. What happened to Miami? I thought they were going to be decent this year.
I think they're better now that Derek King's gone. NC State should win that game, but it wouldn't surprise me just to see them lose just because of the way the ACC is.
And at 11:59, Hawaii plays New Mexico State.
I probably will not be watching that game.
That's
a little too late for me.
I don't even know what. That's not even going to be televised.
That Utah-Oregon State game should be pretty good because if I'm not mistaken, Oregon State is also undefeated in the Pac-12, along with Oregon in that Pac-12 North division.
Yeah.
And Utah leads the Pac-12 South right now. So that should be a pretty good game. I'll probably watch that game.
Yeah, there's not any really. I mean, there's that one late game, but everything else is like 7:30 is that last game.
I'm really enjoying a lot of these other conferences that normally I don't watch a ton of. Like, obviously I try to watch a lot of the Big Ten games and a lot of the Pac-12 games. I really don't watch a lot of ACC or Pac-12, but I'm finding myself watching a lot of Pac-12 games this year because the conference in that division is so tight.
Yeah.
Just like the Big 12 and the Big 10 this year. They're fun conferences to pay attention to because there's a lot of good teams and the races are tight. But like I keep going back to, I don't want to see the usual suspects in the playoffs. I'm pretty certain we're going to get at least 2 of the usual suspects. Beggars can't be choosers. I would like to see 2 teams that either A, haven't made the playoff before or maybe only have made it one time, get in against maybe 2 of the usual suspects like Oklahoma or Alabama, Ohio State.
And that could very well be the case, but Alabama can't lose another game. That's the one thing
they can't. Neither can Ohio State. I think if Oklahoma loses one game, they're out completely.
Yeah.
Ohio State, like we just mentioned, they got to play number 7, and I'm going to give the rankings now what they are now. They probably won't be that way when they play them, but currently Penn State's number 7. They got to play them in a few weeks. And I believe it's at Penn State. Could be wrong, but I think it's at Penn State. Then they got to play number 25 Purdue at home. Then they got to play Michigan State at home, and then they got to play Michigan. All ranked teams. Pretty decent gauntlet right there. Yeah. That's going to be 4 tough games to get through for Ohio State. Can they get through it unscathed? Can they get through it unscathed and without injuries? You never know. But I think they're going to end up doing it. Yeah.
But only time will tell.
Yeah.
I mean, this season's about halfway over now. You're starting to get, you got about, there's 12 teams probably still alive, maybe, give or take.
Now, here's something I was thinking about today. When do the playoff rankings come out? Is that after next week, or is that this Tuesday?
Isn't that like the first week in November?
It might be. I don't know.
I don't know. But anyway.
I thought it was after like 8 games.
Okay, so we probably got after the Florida game or after that LSU-Bama game or whatever. But the way it stands right now, Georgia, Cincinnati, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Ohio State is your top 5.
Michigan, Penn State, and Oklahoma State, Michigan State, and Oregon round out the top 10. Yeah. All of those teams have an opportunity to win and jump up.
Yeah. So, but in all reality, there's about 11 teams that are still alive to do something.
Yeah.
Which
is cool.
I mean, I guess you could say Notre Dame, for that matter, still.
Yeah, alive. I mean, look at that top 10. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. If you count top 11, you got 5 Big Ten teams. Most of those teams are going to play each other, so that's going to get shaken up a little bit more. I still think, your Georgia, Alabama, Cincinnati, Oklahoma are kind of just waiting for other teams to either lose or to get jumped somehow.
Right. And I just think, that bottom half there, that Ohio State's, the Michigan, Penn State's, if there's a one-loss team and they make it through that gauntlet, they're getting in.
Oh, yeah, completely
so,
agree.
I mean, we know that. We know that's happening. Ohio State is at 5-1 right now. I mean, they win every game here on out. They get in.
I'm looking at this, Alabama and Georgia are probably going to play in Atlanta. So we got kind of like a de facto semifinal game right there. But I do think both of them are getting in, unless if Alabama loses, they're out. But if they beat Georgia, I do think both of them are getting in.
Yeah.
Cincinnati and Oklahoma, to me, have to win style points, because if any of the three, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, run the table and win that conference, they're getting in a one-loss conference champ. I honestly believe that Cincinnati and Oklahoma kind of got to win by style.
Yeah. So it's up for grabs. Anybody who wants to get in the Final Four, there's 11, 12 teams that have a track to get there. So we'll see how this season plans out. Yeah.
Looking forward to chaos.
Yes. As long as Georgia remains on top and there's no other issues. But anyway, that's just wishful thinking. But that concludes this week's episode. We'll be back later on this week, if not Sunday, with a review of next week's games.
See you guys.